right, I think we'll get started. Good evening to those of you that are in the United States or North America. Thank you very much for joining us. My name is Jane Herring, and I am the President and CEO of the World Affairs Council of Orange County. Just to give you a little bit of introduction of who we are, because I know we have a lot of people on here who've not registered for our events before, who are elsewhere in the country or the world. The World Affairs Council of Orange County is part of a network of over 90 independently run, operated, and funded World Affairs Councils all across the country, from Honolulu to Boston. We trace our roots back to post-World War I in about 1918, as we started as the League of Nations Association. And our role and our mission is simply to keep our communities engaged with the world outside. We believe that global engagement is important and a vital service. We are a nonpartisan nonprofit, and we do programming from luncheons, webinars, obviously, galas, picnics, any opportunity to get people together to learn about the pressing issues of the day, bringing in local experts. We have General Petraeus came over the last year, former CIA director. We are working on an event with Admiral Rogers, who was the head of NSA. He'll be coming next month to talk about cybersecurity. Wide variety of programming. We always want to hear what you want to hear about. We are here for you. So please feel free to reach out at any time. And then, of course, as we are completely funded by membership and program dues, which we try to keep low, we rely on donations to keep our operations going and to bring you programming like the one we're about to now. So if you can find it in your heart at all, I will put a link in the chat. So if you're moved by this program and would like to make a tax-deductible donation to our 501c3, we would greatly appreciate it, and wish you all a very happy holiday season. Now let me introduce our speakers today. We are very, very lucky to have, hold on one second, I lost my tab. Of course I did. There we are. We're very lucky today to have Dr. Jerrold Green. He's the global advisor to Cedars-Sinai, a Los Angeles-based healthcare organization, and a senior fellow at the UCLA Burkle Center for International Relations. Prior to this, he spent 16 years as president and chief executive officer of the Pacific Council on International Policy, and as a research professor of communication, business, and international relations at the University of Southern California. Green was a partner at Best Associates in Dallas, Texas, a merchant banking firm with global operations. He also occupied senior management positions at the Rand Corporation, where he was awarded the Rand Medal for Excellence. Dr. Green has a BA from the University of Massachusetts, Boston, as well as an MA and PhD in political science from the University of Chicago. His academic career began at the University of Michigan, and he subsequently joined the University of Arizona, where he became a professor of political science and sociology, as well as director of the Center for Middle Eastern Studies. Also joining us today is Mr. Saed Moujtahed, the president of Syrian Institute for Progress. Saed is an electrical engineer and founder of Apex Consulting, an engineering consulting firm in the United States. He has been an activist since 2000, putting the Arab American community on the American political map by volunteering his time to empower Arab Americans to exercise and protect their rights in the U.S. and have a strong political voice. He has worked tirelessly with Congress to defend the rights of the Arab and Muslim American communities against stereotypes and labeling. He was part of a national American Muslim coalition that organized American Arab and Muslims to vote for Governor George W. Bush as a block vote during the U.S. presidency's campaign in 2000. He also successfully campaigned for Congresswoman Cynthia McKinney for her 2004 election, which she won. At this point, I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Green to start talking about what's happening in Syria and why it's important. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And lest I forget, I really would like to echo our CEO's request. Support your World Affairs Councils wherever you are. It is, as we've seen, every other week, being an engaged, well-informed citizen is vitally important, not only for this country, but globally. So I know there are people from other World Affairs Councils on here as well. I support my World Affairs Council in Los Angeles, modestly, but I do. So I would encourage all of you to do the same. I also want to thank Dr. Richard Downey, who was the former CEO of Orange County World Affairs, who's now the CEO of Los Angeles World Affairs. This was originally scheduled to be an LA World Affairs Council event, and we ran into some headwinds. So we very naturally moved it to Orange County, Richard's alma mater, and Jane invited a number of others to join us. So I really want to welcome everybody, and a special welcome to Dr. Downey, since this is, this is his home turf. It's interesting to me that we're doing this event, we're talking about this topic at the World Affairs Council in Orange County. And the reason I say that is the World Affairs Council in Orange County has two members who I consider friends and I've known for a long time. One is Saed Moujtahed, who is on this call with us, and he is under the weather and he's got a fever. And so we're happy to have him, but we don't want to overburden him. And the other is Susan Badge. And both Susan and Saed have, as long as I have known them, have been aggressive supporters of, at some personal cost, because it's so challenging, of a free democratic Syria. And so it's really an interesting and charming irony that they're both part of Orange County, because this has been going on for a long time. You're going to hear a lot of naysaying about Syria and what's going to happen, and concerns and worries about HTS and so on and so forth. But I'd like to remind everybody we should take a moment to celebrate. The Assad regime was one of the most brutal, awful regimes on the planet. It was up there with North Korea. I mean, think of the worst regimes imaginable in terms of cruelty, disinterest in their own populations, and really under the Assads, Syria was really a failed state, sort of, artificially glued together with some help from the Russians and the Iranians and so forth. So before the naysaying begins, which inevitably it will, including a little bit from me, I really think we need to take a deep breath. We need to step back, and we need to celebrate with some joy the liberation of the Syrian people. The Assad regime, the brutal dictator, the Assad dictatorship is gone. Assad went, what more appropriate place for him to go than Moscow, where he'll probably be celebrated for his brutality. So I think that as a human rights issue, and as a pivotal, important moment in modern Syrian history and Middle Eastern history, we're at a very, very good spot. So I think we need to acknowledge that. What I want to do is in addition to congratulating the Syrian people, and hope that this turns out well, is to think about two ways that we need to analyze what's going on. One is we need to analyze what's going on domestically. What does this mean? What is Syria going to look like? And no one has the answer to this. No one has the answer to this. The conventional wisdom is HTS, which stands for Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, the al-Sham, which refers to the Levant Liberation Movement, is on the list of terrorist groups of the United States and other countries. It's a religious-based political movement, and generally religious-based political movements don't do very well in terms of promoting democracy and freedom and gender rights and all of the other things that we're so committed to. But having said that, I think we need to allow this to unfold. And if HTS takes a misstep, which it's certainly possible that they will, and they might, then I think we need to respond to that and address it. But I don't think we need to do that yet. I don't think we need to anticipate failure. I mean, the very fact that they were able not only to rid Syria of the Assad regime, which is a remarkable accomplishment, but also to undermine Iran. Iran, as you know, was a major supporter of the Assad regime. Syria was a conduit for arms and other things to Hezbollah in Lebanon. Hezbollah, certainly was undermining the Lebanese state, and access to Hezbollah for Iran has been curtailed because they can no longer rely on Syria as a conduit to Lebanon. It also, so not only was it an incredible defeat for Iran, and I want to talk about Iran because I've got one wacky idea which I intend to share with you about Iran, but also Russia. Russia has a naval base in Syria, which gives it access to the Mediterranean. It has access to military facilities, and Russia really, brings nothing good to the Middle East. So that to have Syria be liberated not only from the Assads, but also from Iran and Russia are really remarkably significant developments and things that we need to praise. There are a lot of players in Syria in addition to HDS. There are Kurdish groups, there are Syrian nationalist groups, and Syria is sort of a place where the great powers and the lesser powers regionally play out their conflicts on Syrian soil at the expense of the Syrian people. So that HTS is certainly not the only game in town. There are others, and all of these groups are supported by external powers. The American position on HTS, I think, has been reasonable, which is saying things like, well, in the past we have disagreed with HTS. They are saying all the right things. Let's hope they live up to what they say. And I think that's a reasonable way to look at it, assuming the United States actually stands behind it. HTS did do the work for the United States in that they were able to get rid of, not only the Assads, who we've been opposed to, but also Russia and Iran. And that absolutely is in support of American regional interests. The other thing that's interesting here is the role of Israel. And people keep asking me, well, how did HTS, how did they move? How did this happen so quickly? And a couple of things happened that showed the leadership of HTS that this may be the time for them to move. The first, ironically and interestingly, is Israel. Not Israel only because of what it's done to Hamas, but more importantly, from a Syrian perspective, what happened both in its conflict with Hezbollah, in which Israel was incredibly successful, but also Israel's response to Iran. Israel has through air power, basically humiliated and humbled Iran in a very, very significant way. So, for example, the ability, the rocket-based missile protection that Iran had is no longer in existence. A lot of the armaments and other things in Iran were taken out by the Israelis. And Iran, by being humiliated by the attack by Israel, being humiliated by it's being expelled from Syria because of the triumph of HTS and a variety of other things, is really in a very, very weakened, difficult position. So the whole geopolitical map of the Middle East has been profoundly affected by this in ways that could lead to something good or could lead to something bad. Traditionally, when religious-based national liberation organizations triumph, as was the case in Iran, for example, good things tend not to happen. Many Iranians who were hoping for democracy and thought that, Khomeini was kind of this, old guy who didn't get it, were proved very, very wrong. And the Islamic Republic of Iran, has been in existence since 1979. And, although it's facing a lot of challenges, it's still there. Will HTS go down that route? Will HTS be like, the Taliban? Will it be like the mullahs in Iran? We really don't know. We really don't know. History suggests that we should have a degree of pessimism, but I think, we would be ill-advised to judge HTS too quickly. And indeed, I think that there were reasons why, some engagement between the United States and the West with HTS makes sense. And indeed, the British were, meeting with the leadership of HTS today in Damascus, which I think is a very good thing. I think, HTS should be given a chance. Let's see what happens, and hopefully they will have learned that religious-based national liberation movements tend not to do very well. They tend not to do very well. And there are ways in which, they might be able to be more successful. What one worries about when you're seeing something like the Assad family being kicked out of Syria is Libya, in which Gaddafi was removed from power. Libya has been fractionated, and it's still divided and still very weak today because they were never able to sort of find a subsequent solution to the dictatorship of Gaddafi. So on the internal side, we don't know, and Saed, if he's feeling up to it, will know far more about this than I do. And I'd love to give him a chance to say a few words about this. I think regionally, again, we don't know, but there are encouraging signs. So here, my idea, which I have been mulling over, is Trump has said, President Trump or President-elect Trump has said on more than one occasion that he would like, he is open to negotiations with Iran. That may not sound like a particularly logical or an activity that's likely to succeed. And the best example is Trump's negotiations with Kim Jong-un in North Korea, which were of great benefit to Kim Jong-un, but were of no benefit at all to the rest of Asia or the United States. Having said this, the Middle East has changed since his last presidency. Iran is finding itself in a very, very difficult situation. The Iranian people are extremely unhappy with the dictatorship of the mullahs. The new president of Iran, again, is a somewhat more moderate person than his predecessors. He is not Persian. He's from Azerbaijan. He's a physician. His vice president is Javad Zarif, the former foreign minister, who was involved in the Iran nuclear deal with the United States. So by Iranian standards, there may be an opportunity for President Trump that wasn't there before. And again, I am always in favor of diplomacy. Whether it succeeds or not is unclear. But this may be the time to try and engage Iran. Should the United States try to engage Iran, this will be a little bit complicated vis-a-vis U.S. relations with Israel, because what the Israelis want in Iran is regime change. Without doubt, they've said it multiple times. I get it. The problem is there are no contenders for regime change in Iran that are likely to have a chance. And there may be a way to sort of moderate, the current leadership of Iran. Khamenei is not getting any younger. The current president and vice president are, somewhat different than their predecessors. We do have a new president in the United States. Syria, is no longer occupied by the Iranians. Iran is going to have very, very limited access to Lebanon. So who knows? Who knows? This may be this may be an opportunity. The other thing to think about is the rest of the Arab world, particularly the Gulf states, because I think if HTS is smart and they actually do the kind of things they have said they would like to do, if they actually adhere to that, and they are not, some reincarnated version of Al-Qaeda or ISIS, if there is an opportunity to reconfigure Syria, to bring back refugees from around the world, to basically rebuild the country from the ground up, which is what needs to be done. It is not at all unreasonable to expect that the United Arab Emirates would support this, Qatar would support this, Saudi Arabia would support this. And I think the notion of a stable Syria, it doesn't have to be a democratic Syria, which, obviously we in the West would like, because Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the UAE are not democracies, but a stable Syria that is not a threat to its neighbor or to its own people is something that some of the wealthier countries in the Middle East would be willing to support. Let me stop here. Said, would you like to say a few words?
Yeah,
Then we can open
sure.
up questions. But Said,
Yeah,
I want to turn it over to you and thank you and apologize for dragging you out of a sick bed, but it's for
no,
a good cause. So welcome
no
and thank
problem.
you.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you, Jerry. And also, I just want to echo what Jerry said about the World Affairs Council. It's an amazing organization. I started attending since 2000, and I learned a lot through the World Affairs Council. Now, going back to the HTS, I would like just to give a really quick brief to the audience about Syria revolution. It's been now 14 years. Started 2011, and it started by a kids writing, Assad, you have to go. And of course, with the brutality, and then, they went to the street and start shooting, the demonstrators, etc. Things went to an armed conflict where the Free Syrian Army formed, which is came from the defection from the Syrian army, who refused to shoot at their own people. We need to acknowledge the fact that the reason we have HTS today is really, and I'm not playing politics here, it was the failure of the Obama administration by not supporting the Free Syrian Army that is really moderate. And Ambassador Ford resigned in frustration in June 4th, 2014, and he was asked by NPR the reason he resigned, and he said, the U.S. policy in Syria could no longer be defended. And then followed by Fred Hoff, a senior advisor in the State Department. Now, where we are today, the defeat of Assad is, in my opinion, it is the most important, second important things in our lifetime after the fall of the Berlin Wall, especially in the Middle East. Because we never had a democratic system. We always have a dictatorship. Now, the dictatorship of Assad between his father and him was a total of 54 years. 54 years, the Syrian people cannot speak up. As a matter of fact, the Syrian always say, be careful when you talk inside your house. Walls has ears. That's how bad it was. So that victory last week was a great day for all Syrians. Now, what do we think of the HTS? The HTS, we are all hopeful that they will be in one way or another forming a democratic system, especially after the interview on CNN of Al-Jolani, or what's called Mr. Al-Shara. And he said that he will have an interim government, they will rewrite the constitution, and then they will open it up for election. Now, one thing I'm optimistic about is the fact that the Syrian people in nature are moderate, and Syrian are not Taliban, they're not Libyan. They are moderate people, they are entrepreneur people, they are Syria on the Mediterranean. Throughout history, Damascus been in existence maybe 4,000 or 5,000 years before Christ as a continuous civilization. So we're not the Taliban type. That's one thing. Of course, I am personally cautiously optimistic, but we are monitoring every move. So far, like Jerry said, Al-Jolani or Al-Shara saying the really right stuff. He gives assurances to all minority, including Christians and Alawites, and told them, you are part of the Syria fabric for hundreds of years. We are going to rebuild Syria altogether. Remember, Syria is a really failed state. Syria is bankrupt. So Jolani has a lot on his plate. It's not an easy task, I'm telling you. It is really not. And Syria needs the help of every country, especially United States. Now, I see that earthquake in the Middle East truly as an opportunity going forward if Syria gets enough support to finally have a good stability, lasting stability in the Middle East. However, the Israeli should really stop bombarding Syria, and they degraded 80% of the Syrian army while the Syrian people trying to get their ashes together and rebuild. I think we need a moderate government in Israel because we need to have peace. What I like about Jolani is he said, I am not here to make a war or fight. Syria has enough of fighting. This is the time to rebuild. That's a very optimistic statement. Again, I'm very cautious, and we are here as a Syrian American working really hard behind the scenes to keep his word with accountability. What else I can say other than remember, we have a country, no voice, no political opposition for 54 years, and it's not an easy task. So I would stop at that.
Well, thank you. And I agree. I mean, we agree. We are cautiously optimistic. We're not naive, but on the other hand, we can't react to a history that hasn't unfolded yet. And so far, Jolani and others, seem to be going in the right direction. If they're smart, they'll keep going in that direction because Saed is right. I mean, this is a failed state and it has no resources. And let me try and answer a couple of questions. Said, if you want to answer these, jump in. The first is from Sheldon Helen, and he said, "How is HDS able to defeat the entire Assad regime with its army, etc., in just 14 days?" One of the things I heard. Sorry, go ahead. No, go. You go first, Said.
Yeah. Would you like me to address it? Okay.
Sure, absolutely.
This has been really the mystery of the entire world. I mean, I got calls from members of Congress, from friends, from actually, I was in DC with Suzanne, the 2 days before the victory. And we also asked that question because at that time, he already entered Hama and was on his way to Hamas. And by the time I hit my plane back to on Saturday, he already in Damascus. Now, my own analysis and talking to various people in that, they're very involved in that issue files, is that two things happen. I believe the US with the Turks and also the Qatari had, and of course, Israel is engaged, has taken the position that Assad is no longer feasible to lead the country. Simultaneously, the Assad regime and the Russian were really bombing the hell out of Idlib, where the stronghold of HTS, and this happened after the Israeli degraded Hezbollah and killed Nasrallah. The Syrian people went and celebrated in Idlib. And as a result, they bombarded the HTS in Idlib as a revenge. Jolani took the opportunity to go into Aleppo. And I would think that it was blessed by Turkey, but the plan was to go only into Aleppo, which is the second largest city in Syria. It's the industrial city. While he found no resistance because his attack was through drone and he used the elite forces, many of the Syrian army defected and the Iranian militia. And the reason is because that army has no faith in the government. So they just fled. Jolani took that opportunity and went into Hama, معرة العمران, and then Hama. And that time, I believe many countries asked him to stop, and he didn't listen because he saw everything is open. So the combination of the decision, Assad is no longer of interest, and Jolani taking the opportunity that Syrian army start giving up their arms, that's how he got so quick to Damascus, and the equation changed. Even there was a meeting supposed to be Astana meeting in Qatar on the Monday of that week. They had to postpone it 2 days because Jolani changed the equation. He did not stop at Aleppo. He continued going down. So in summary, the Syrian army is not a nationalistic army anymore because of the corruption, because of the Assad corruption. And they decided just to throw their arms.
You know, there's another thing that's it's sort of a historical curiosity, but it's interesting, is the Ukrainians were providing significant numbers of drone technology, largely because, you know, the Russians were part of the target, or Russia's role in Syria. And apparently, and this, you know, in the history of this is written, we'll know more, the assistance that they got from the Ukrainians with drones was actually very, very significant. And the Syrian army, sorry, go ahead.
Very true what you said.
Yeah, it's interesting, you know, I mean, and that's, you know, that it's not simply, it's not, you know, for many of the external observers, it's not simply about Syria. It's also about, you know, Russia and Iran. We have another question. So this is a good one for you as well, from Doria Tassi. And the question is, what would it take to lift the sanctions on Syria now that Assad, the main reason they were there in the first place, is no longer there? Doria very correctly points out the Syrian people need some oxygen quickly. And I was listening on the BBC on my way here about Syria's foreign reserves, its gold reserves. A lot of it just disappeared, which means they went into the pockets of the Assads and their cronies. So the country is really bankrupt. So, Said, what needs to be done to lift the sanctions, and how do we do it quickly?
I think it's really simple. It's up to Jolani to show the West and the United States that he's really implementing what he promised. And I think the Senate, I was talking to Senator Risch, who would be maybe, you know, with the coming administration, Trump administration, will be heading maybe the international relation. They're ready really to lift it, but they are just cautious to wait a bit to see if Jolani implement, you know, to make sure that everybody in Syria has equal right and so forth. I'm very hopeful because lifting the sanction based on especially the Caesar's bill, it's very clear that Assad fall and Syria is democratic. By that nature, the Caesars will be seized. So I think it's just only weeks away to see where we're going. And of course, the Syrian American has a lot of work to do to lobby our Congress and Senate on that. But I honestly don't see it's an obstacle.
Well, there's another message from Doria Tassi, which is interesting, which says, I have direct access to Jolani. I'm residing in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. So Doria Tassi, tell Jolani he really needs to convince the United States that he's serious, that he's a person of his word, that he understands it, that, you know, all of these things. You know, once the U.S. is convinced, I think it will help. The issue that's interesting, though, is the Trump administration is less eager to engage globally and internationally than was the Biden administration. J.D. Vance said, I don't give a damn about Ukraine. Trump said, stay out of Syria. It's not our fight. And, there's a way to stay out of Syria by not, pulling triggers and getting engaged militarily. I think for the United States not to be involved in Syria in this reconstruction period would be a terrible, terrible mistake. Whether the Trump administration will agree with me or not needs to be seen. But I think if Giuliani really needs to be, since we've got a line to Giuliani through one of our participants today, I think it's imperative that he convince the United States that he's serious and he's going to do what he said he's going to do. Let me read another question, if I may. This is from our former CEO, Dr. Richard Downey. What is the best approach for the U.S. to coordinate a way forward with HTS to perhaps nudge them in what we consider the right direction for them, while we still may have the opportunity to exert leverage and incentives? And then he said, thanks, great dialogue. Well, that's, thank you, Richard, for your kind words. I said, what do you think? What's the best way for the U.S. To approach this?
I think the most important thing is to be really clear, not vague, in the U.S. announcement toward Giuliani. On one hand, they were semi-supportive, like you say, Jerry, let's give him a time.
Yeah.
But then you come up and you hear another, statement that contrary to the first. Like, for instance, yesterday they say they advise Americans to leave Syria. I mean, how can you help a country devastated 54 years, and then you create a fear because that means investors are not going to go there now. You see what I mean? Just yesterday, I was approached by a group of people that wanted to go to Syria, and then an hour later, that announcement came. So I think a clear policy or clear communication will really help. My personal opinion is that the U.S. will not leave Syria. I'm talking about the military base that we have in the Northeast. Knowing Trump as a person who comes from a business background, he will see an opportunity in Syria. Syria is a very rich country in resources, not only oil, but the natural gas and also minerals. So I think we're going to see just so many up and down vague announcements till things stabilize. The other thing is the Syrian American community been really working hard for the last 14 years, and they gain experience over that length of time. And we have been somewhat effective, and we were behind the Caesars bill, actually. So I think it's a combination of just, continue lobbying, continue watching Giuliani or HTS. Hopefully in the next 6 months are very crucial, and I am hopeful that things will go into stability. But we really need all neighboring countries to provide help and not create chaos.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And indeed, lots of Americans are going to Syria now as we speak. Not only, Syrian refugees, to, go back and see family and so forth, but there's a full court press to find Austin Tice, who is an American journalist who it is hoped is still alive, I think after 14 years in Syrian captivity. The United States should open its embassy in Damascus as soon as possible. This is a good time to appoint, either Robert Ford or a new ambassador. I mean, we need to, if we want to influence the outcome, we need to be in the game. And this is to Richard Downey's question. This is the time to do it. We really should be present in Syria and get engaged, and then we will have some influence.
Very true. And I do know that Giuliani or his organization HTS are cooperating to find Mr. Tice. which is
Yeah.
really positive. And the White House working around the clock. Biden wants to free him before, he leaves office.
Yeah. No, it's and again, this is not only about Syria. It's about Syria. It's also about Lebanon. It's also about Jordan. I mean, it's for those of you, who are a little rusty on your geography, just have a look at the map and look where Syria is. It's about Iraq. I mean, it really is, the heartland. And it's absolutely, it's not only a human rights issue, it's geopolitically the smart thing to do. David
Very
Schilling
true.
asked a question: can the Damascus regime work with the Kurds? Said, what do you think?
Well, this is a very sticky point, and I'll tell you the reason. Syrian looked to the Kurdish. They are Syrian, no different than me or anybody else. As a matter of fact, if you speak to Kurdish people, Syrian Kurdish, they will tell you the same. Now, what happened is the Obama administration, unfortunately, they refused the Free Syrian Army to fight ISIS. They created so many excuses, unfounded. And then they attracted the Kurdish separatists. They don't even speak Arabic. They brought them from the mountains, of some of them in Iran, in Iraq, in Turkey. And it is called the PKK, which is really our terrorist organization. The US consider a terrorist organization. We armed them. We gave them control of the Syrian oil in the northeast. So I truly believe, strongly believe, that the Kurdish separatist has no place in Syria. The Kurdish people are no different than the Armenian Syrian, Christian Syrian, Alawite Syrian, and all of them has to have an equal right. And we are building not a religious country. We are building a country for all, that a civilized country. So no need for, bringing an issue and make a problem and talk about Kurdish issue. Because if you talk to the Kurds, they tell you I'm Syrian. I just want to share a really quick story on this. Somewhere 2017-18, can't recall, Ambassador Satterfield was the Assistant Secretary of State. I talked to him. I asked him if I can bring two prominent Syrian opposition, which was Michel Kilo and Muaz al-Khatib. And I told him I want to bring fabric of Syrian. So for the Kurdish side, I went and I brought a very prominent person called Bassam Barazi, who's a Kurdish. So when I told Bassam, I need you to come, he told me my schedule, blah, blah. I say, really, we need you because you need to represent the Kurdish. And then he looked at me, honestly got upset. He said, Saeed, so you only look at me as Kurdish, not Syrian? I said, Bassam, you're taking me wrong. So I'm just giving you the feeling of how Kurdish think. Kurdish Syrian are Syrian. Anything else you hear, they're not Syrian. They were brought up from neighboring country. And those are invaders to us. And they did a lot of violation, human rights violation. They recruited kids as young as 14 years old. And this was documented by a civil rights organization funded by the State Department in Washington, D.C.
Can I ask you to say a little more about the Free Syrian Army? Because, if the HTS would not have been able to do this were not for the Free Syrian Army. And we're hearing a lot about HTS, but we're not hearing a lot about the Free Syrian Army. So what, are the Free Syrian Army and HTS going to be able to coexist? Will they make a deal? How does, because these are two significant, it's not just one significant organization, it's two significant organizations.
True. Back in 2015, when the Russians entered Syria and started bombing the hell out of the people in Idlib and Aleppo, and you guys can see the pictures. I mean, they leveled Aleppo to the ground. The Turks intervened, and then Astana was launched, and they came up with the deal that the Free Syrian Army will be under the Turks And then when this all happened with the HTS, the last 10 days of fight, my information is that the Turks did not allow the Free Syrian Army to get involved.
No.
However, there was a faction of them called the National Syrian Army, which is an offshoot of the Free Syrian Army, but not in the big magnitude of number of soldiers, did fight along with HTS, and they liberated Syria. I do not know why the Turks did that. Is it maybe they're reserving them maybe down the road to push the PKK out, which is a terrorist organization? Maybe that's the case. But the way I visualize future Syria is all the factions, including Free Syrian Army, are going to be all unified as a new organized Syrian National Army.
You know, it's funny because Sheldon Helen is asking us. I'm just going to read how the question, because I'm very sympathetic to the question. Especially as you stated, there is no positive track record anywhere in the third world where this type of regime is successful in bringing peace and prosperity to the country. Are we? He didn't say this, but are we not being a little bit naive? And you know, I think Saed and I both said in slightly different ways, we are cautiously optimistic, which is a synonym for we hope this works. But it's absolutely not guaranteed that it will. And it's in Syria's interest for it to work. It's in the rest of the world's interest for it to work, but that doesn't mean it will. Saed, what do you think?
Honestly, I mentioned that early on. I think getting rid of Assad, you got rid of the Iranian, you got rid of the Russian, you got rid of the Hezbollah, you got rid of God knows how many factions supported by Iran. And some of them came all the way from Afghanistan and Pakistan fighting. So this is an opportunity that if the world supports Syria to stabilize and build its country and bring all these pressure from Europe and other country and regional country, the refugee come back to Syria, that's going to bring stability. And I am very hopeful that with this stability, it will be a great opportunity to have the Middle East all coexist in peace and prosperity. But we need to give them a chance. We should not go quick to judgment. I am cautiously optimistic that let's give them a chance.
Yeah, we're using the word hope a lot, but neither one of us, if I may speak for Said, we're not naive, and this is not our first rodeo. And you know, there are two things. You know, one is they always say, you know, hope for the best, plan for the worst. And as Ronald Reagan always said, trust but verify. So, you know, HTS will be believed if they deliver, and if they don't deliver, then you know, the world is not going to sit and give them, you know, have infinite patience for them to you know, to be malevolent. But so far, you know, there's reason for cautious optimism.
I just want to make a quick comment, Jerry. You are right. I'm using cautiously optimistic and hopeful. And the reason I use hopeful is because my confidence is not only not in Jolani or HTS. My confidence in the Syrian people. The Syrian endure a lot over 54 years. And I don't know if people knows how many people been killed under Assad in the prisons. I don't know if you guys are watching all these horrific, you know, photos, you know, women walking out of the jail with 6 kids. Every kid has a different father. They never seen the light. So my hope is in the aspiration of the Syrian people. And we fought this for 54 years, and the revolution, a lot of people, you know, 2/3 of the population were displaced. They're not going to allow anybody such as HTS or Jolani to steal that dream. That's why I say hopeful. My hope in the Syrian people.
Let me ask you, in the Syrian community outside of Syria, in the United States, are people thinking of going back? Not necessarily to live, but to visit, to invest, to sort of bring lessons from their lives in the United States, to promote education. I mean, there's American universities everywhere. So maybe there'll be an American university in Syria. What's the role? How do you anticipate the role of the Syrian diaspora in the reconstruction of Syria?
Absolutely. We have a large organization called SAM, Syrian American Medical Society. And the Syrian here in America, I think we're around 1.5 in population. Truly majority of them are physicians. And they take a lead position in key hospitals. And now they have a program of rotation to go and help in rebuilding the medical system that is really collapsed, not only in Damascus, but in entire Syria. They were very active during the revolution by building mobile hospitals. Many of them were killed by the bombing. Yesterday, as I mentioned earlier, I was invited to join big business delegation. So people are already not only thinking, they are planning to go. That's only here, but I even got communication from people as far as Saudi Arabia asking if we have any program for people to come and help. This is really a great day for Syrian. I think it is the most enjoyable, unimaginable day for all Syrians. Every Syrian lost a brother, sister, whether tortured or killed or what have you. No family in Syria did not lose people. So yes, and the Syrian people are determined. They're hardworking people, and you will be surprised if everything goes well and the neighboring country and US and Europe truly, with good intention, help Syria, you're going to have Syria prosperous in such a short period of time.
I can't imagine, that Christmas is next week, a more hopeful statement to end on. So I'm going to turn it back to Jane and Saed, I want to thank you and apologize for pulling you out of a sick bed to join us. But this has been your life since the first day I met you. And I'm glad things are taking a positive turn. The only thing I will finally say is this may not be America's fight, but this is absolutely in the interest of the United States to do what we can to promote the reunification and stability of Syria. It's imperative, and I believe it's our responsibility to get involved. So Jane, let me turn it back to you. Richard Downey, wherever you are, thank you for making this happen. And I want to thank everybody for, their excellent questions and their participation. So Jane, back to you.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you, Jerry. And thank you, Saed. I can't believe you did this while sick. So I hope you get a chance to go back to bed and somebody's making soup for you. For everyone who's here today, I am always so very grateful for anyone who attends any of our events, because it's your curiosity and your caring for what is happening beyond the world that is so necessary. When it comes to being nonpartisan, I truly believe that our only enemy is apathy. And that's, a big part of why we end up in not so great situations, is that not enough good people are caring. So thank you all for being a part of this. Again, I am a professional fundraiser. I have to put this at the very end. It is the end of our fundraising year. We have a goal. We have very big dreams for what we want to do and to bring more programming like this to you and to everyone else in the community to keep people engaged. If you can donate, you can go on our website. Even $5 makes a difference. I promise we need buy pencils too. So please be a part of us. If you're not a member and you would like to be a member of ours, if you're local, please, by all means, if you're somewhere else in the country, find your local council, stay engaged, stay involved. And I hope everyone has a really wonderful holiday season. And let's hope for peace and prosperity for all areas of the world. Thank you all very much.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you. Thank you all. Bye-bye.